It's Saturday, and welcome to another episode of PO Cubed, your chronological guide to Nintendo's handheld consoles. My name's DD Ash, and this week we're playing Bo Jackson 2 Games in 1, Skate or Die Tour de Thrash, Sneaky Snakes, Tailgater, and Caesar's Palace. Let's start the show.
Who knows baseball and football? Jackson baseball and football. Either way you look at it, it's a winner. No one knows football and baseball better than Bo Jackson, and no one knows LCD video games better than Tiger.
Bo Jackson 2 Games in 1 DMG-BJ, developed by Equilibrium and published by THQ. It won't surprise anyone to hear that I'm not familiar with this particular sportsman, outside of the fact that you can cheese through Tecmo Bowl with him, but someone who can play 2 sports to a professional standard must have a worthy enough name to put to an excellent game, surely. I'm still waiting for the WG Grace 5-in-1 combination cartridge at some point. Anyway, this guy remains the only athlete in history to be named an all-star in both football and baseball. His list of honorifics also includes the obviously prestigious The Greatest Athlete in Video Game History, a venerable and sought-after epithet for sure. Seeing as how it's tough to get one sport right on the Game Boy, suffice to say I don't hold out a great deal of hope for this. Firstly, the football game tries far too hard to be a simulation rather than a playable experience. This is a painfully slow rendition of football. You can only see the field around where the ball is, in 15-yard increments. The player you control has a circle around him, so is more visible than one where he's just flashing, as I've seen before. If you are defending, press A when near the player with the ball, who is also circled, to try to tackle him. Whether or not it comes off is pure chance, and there doesn't seem to be anything you can do to improve said chances. It'll either happen or not. In between each play, you see the usual status screen with the score and time. You can also find out what yard line you're on and the current down. You can cycle through your players to choose who you'd like to control once play resumes. What I mean when I say the game tries to be a simulation becomes clear when you're on offense. You see this timer at the bottom right of the screen, and you have to hike the ball before this counts down, or you'll be penalized. You seem to get penalties given against you entirely at random as well. You can just be trying to start a play and be given a 5-yard penalty. For what, I don't know. The one thing I kind of like in American football games is trying to kick a field goal, but here it's automatic. You don't even get to do it yourself. Baseball has had a bit more success than football on the system so far, so hopefully it'll save the cart here. You can choose innings and 2 from 7 teams. All the teams have the same statistics, that is to say, there's no difference in who you play as. An interesting addition is the idea that the catcher, the guy behind the batsman, gives you, as the pitcher, hand signals to designate what kind of pitch he wants you to do. You choose it yourself, of course, and can check what you've picked by pressing select. After that, it's basically the usual options. Move from side to side to position your throw, and put curve on the ball by pressing left or right. You can make your fielders dive to attempt a catch, and even throw back to the pitcher by pressing start. I don't think you could do that in the other baseball games thus far. Batting is pretty simplistic, but it works. You just press A to swing, holding it for a harder shot. The 2 sports have looked worse, I'll say that much. Football is a little grainy and close, but otherwise decent, and baseball mostly looks great. The close-up of the catcher is a little freaky looking. He appears naked from the waist down, and we can be thankful of where his hand is placed. Audibly, it's nothing out of the ordinary, but does what it needs to. Some sources label this game as Bo Jackson Hit and Run, and yeah, I get it. You're hitting things and running about in both sports. Really though, don't put a tagline on a game that's also the name of a felony. For sure it's what Link is famous for, but you'll never see The Legend of Zelda breaking and entering, will you? I can see what they were going for here. Bo Jackson was a pretty big deal around the turn of the decade by all accounts, and was obviously a very marketable guy. As for the two sports, well, the baseball game is never going to win any awards, but it's pretty good. The football one is not so accomplished and kind of a drag to play. I feel the work hours were wasted on cramming football in there as well, hours that could have been used to make a really good baseball game. Do the football one afterwards if the first one goes well. Having two games that were not as good as they should have been instead of one that is false economy, unfortunately.
I'm the creator of Ultra games for Nintendo, like Metal Gear, where you're a commando searching for deadly weapons. Defender of the Crown, with strategic castle sieges, babes in distress, and skate or die in 5 rad events that pit you against a friend or bionic Lester. So check out Ultra games. Remember, I'm never farther than your TV.
Skate or Die Tour de Thrash DMG-KD, developed by Real Time Associates and published by EA Sports. Deep breaths. Okay, I think I'm ready. The next in the series of one of the toughest Game Boy games so far is the North American exclusive title Skate or Die Tour de Thrash. Bad N Rad was so brutal, I'm still suffering from psychosomatic grazed knees. What was a nightmare of a platformer is given a kind of sequel here. I say kind of because apart from skateboards, this one is totally different. There are 2 modes. Retro Rocket Ramp is a half-pipe, similar to the one in California Games that you have to pull tricks off of. You get 3 minutes to do as many stunts as you can. This mode sucks really hard. It doesn't work properly at all. You repeatedly tap A and a direction to speed up and down move you to the skater's left and right, as you'd expect. Press B just before you launch, then hit some directions in the air. Whether or not you pull off any tricks seems entirely random. It seems to only be influenced by the direction you hit, but still it's apparently hit and miss. Sometimes it grinds on the lip of the slope, other times it does a mid-air spin that sometimes lands, sometimes not. I'm not convinced there's any way to choose what you do or whether you pull it off. Stuff just either happens or it doesn't. Bail 3 times and your dude smashes his board in 2. Should have just done that in the first place. Stale Fish Tour is a race against the clock down a really long halfpipe, avoiding a series of barriers by jumping over them with A or by dodging round either side. You can use the sides of the halfpipe to clear lower ones. Increase and decrease your speed with up and down respectively. You can duck using B, but there's no reason for it. It doesn't speed you up, nor is there ever anything to duck under. I would have much preferred to have B speed you up by crouching rather than having to hold up and still be expected to steer left and right. Seems simple to me that that's how it should have been done, but hey. Speaking of the controls, they're so slippery anyway. I know you're essentially stood on a piece of plywood with wheels, but the majority of the challenge in this mode comes from how hard it is to maneuver. You get so little time to react to things sometimes that if you're heading towards it, you're more than likely hitting it. Go too far up the sides and you'll fly off too. Each time you bail, not only do you have to accelerate again, but you get 3 seconds subtracted off your timer. There are 7 stages, with varied locales such as the obvious Los Angeles to Chernobyl, Baghdad, and Atlantis. There's little difference except the backgrounds. The obstacles are the same, just in a different order and more frequent as you get further. You get a password after each level, and also a really irritating skater dude. I'd never get sick of punching his stupid teeth down his throat if he were real, giving you some unintelligible chat about each stage that I just skip through because I'm clearly not cool enough to translate. You can race alone or against an AI, but this is no fun as the AI seems hell-bent on knocking you off rather than racing. Screw that guy. The game does shine with the way it looks. In the half-pipe mode, the bail animations are pretty funny. If you try to trick over the middle spike but fail, your guy gets impaled on it, board flying in all directions. The 3D effect of the downhill racing mode looks good and is pretty smooth. It even sounds alright. What a shame that the gameplay is such a major letdown. This is the game that ended the Skate or Die series, and to use skateboarding parlance, is pretty bogus, man. Sneaky Snakes DMG-NK, developed by Rare and published by TradeWest. A sequel to the NES game Snake, Rattle N Roll, in Sneaky Snakes you control Attila the Snake. You and Genghis must rescue Sonia, who's been nabbed by the nasty Nibbler. You must survive 16 serpentine levels that are conveniently tricksome. Where the NES game had an isometric viewpoint, this one is two-dimensional with horizontal scrolling. I'm quite glad of this design choice. Isometric is hard to pull off on the Game Boy. The objective of the game is the same though. You start off as just a snake head and need to slither around the level consuming enemies, expanding your serpentine form until you have enough weight to tip the scales at the end of the stage. The scales look like one of those tests of strength you see at carnivals, where you need to hit the thing as hard as you can in order to ring a bell. Here, Attila needs to be a certain weight to make the bell sound, which will then trigger the gate to unlock, allowing you to leave the stage. If you get to the end and you're not heavy enough, you'll have to backtrack to eat more critters. The scales will roughly indicate how fat you are. All the enemies in the game are spherical and include fish, bats, and various other weird-looking animals. When you are large enough, Attila starts flashing. That's when you know to go to the exit. Your downfall comes in many forms. Spikes on either the floor or the ceiling are instant death. If you linger too long in the water, a shark will rip you to shreds. The game is reasonably kind if you perish, you don't shrink or anything, and you start where you left off. However, come into contact with an enemy in a way other than jumping on them, and one of your body segments flies off and you'll need to feed again. Get hit by an enemy and you won't die, unless you only have the head of your snake, kind of like how Sonic can take a hit if he's carrying any rings. There are several manhole covers on many of the stages. Press B on these and something will fly out. Sometimes it's an animal to eat, sometimes a power-up like a propeller hat that boosts your jump, or a diamond which makes you invincible temporarily. Sometimes a bomb that takes one of your body parts away. There are warp zones in some manholes which take you to little bonus sections that help you replenish your time and so on. The time limit per stage is 99 seconds, which is not a lot, so these clock pickups are vital. If the timer runs down, the stage isn't over, but this axe comes after you, which is as terrifying as it sounds, and is instant choppy death on contact. Each level has an enemy generator, which is a slow but surefire way of finding enough enemies. It's kinda dangerous, as not everything it spews out is edible. There are bombs that hurt you, and balloons that do nothing, and it seems to be random. Try not to rely on these if possible, as you can spend a large chunk of your time just waiting for it to drop consumables. Like I mentioned before, simplicity was the correct way to go when it came to the visuals in Sneaky Snakes. The movement is quick and quite slippery, and is hard enough as it is. Trying to do this isometrically would have been a nightmare. The NES game is not one of my favourites for this reason alone. Instead, what we have is a cute, cartoonish little platformer with pretty funky music and inventive gameplay. Tailgater DMG-TG, developed by Natsume and published by Natsume in North America and Europe, and VAP in Japan. It's Saturday, and welcome to episode... Anyway, a dragon warlord known as Basso Gila has teleported his castle and army to the peaceful animal kingdom of Moberry in order to destroy it and establish his ultimate rule. The Council of Elders decided to task your alligator friend, Charlie, with getting rid of the invaders. Each of the 5 worlds, except the last, is split into 4 stages: air, land, cave, and underwater. But the cool thing about Tailgater is that you first start in a level select area, with 4 entrances along the right-hand side of the screen. In each world, you need to clear each of the mini-levels behind these entrances, each of which consist of a few different screens to work through, after which the door will close off. Once all 4 have been beaten, you move on to the next world, but you can choose which of the 4 to tackle. One of the 4 has a boss somewhere. It's not always the 4th door, just so you know, but there's always a way to prepare yourself to fight it, so don't worry if you stumble upon it first. The aim of each part of the game is to whip open all the chests with B, which makes Charlie swing his tail. These take 3 hits each and can contain various things. B tokens add a certain amount onto your score. P tokens add 1 notch onto your power meter, which when full fire a projectile Christopher Belmont style to your tail whips. A bomb that kills all enemies on screen, hearts that replenish a hit point, and lastly a key that opens the exit. This is what you're looking for really, and it's always in the final remaining chest, so it doesn't matter what order you open them, it'll always be in the last one. Once you grab the key and take the exit, which is almost always in the top right hand corner, you move to the next part of the level. After the final part, you're back to the foyer. Here you're granted 2 hearts to fill your HP again, 3 after the end of each world, and you choose the next part you'd like to do. The lowest down stage is often a water level. Now, you're an alligator, so you don't drown, thankfully, but the movement physics are a little different. You fall slower and don't need to jump, but can maneuver about just with the D-pad. The ordinary platform levels have a number of gimmicks, such as temporary platforms, clouds that you'll sink through should you take too long, and the usual spike traps and things of that nature. There are often updrafts and things that propel you in a certain direction. These can help or hinder you. There are lots of different enemies with their own movement patterns. Some follow a specific route while others target you. Some take 1 hit whereas others take several. They'll regenerate after a short while, but you still need to take them out a lot of the time because any contact knocks a health point off. You get a generous invulnerability period afterwards, but even so you need to be careful as this is a 1-life game. You start with 5 hit points and can have a maximum 7, as indicated by the hearts in the top right. Underneath your health meter is the power gauge I mentioned previously. This also has 7 notches on it, and when it's full you get the extra shot. This is invaluable for fighting bosses as it allows you to attack from a distance rather than getting up close. The only thing is, once activated, the power gauge will steadily tick down and you'll lose it once it runs out. You can replenish it for a little while longer by topping the gauge back up with P tokens again, but it will eventually diminish and you'll have to start collecting again. Fortunately, you usually, I think always, get a mega power-up just before fighting a boss that instantly fills your meter, and this gives you plenty of time to wipe out the beast without having to worry about taking a full charge into the boss fight. Like I say, you don't know which door has the boss behind it, so this is a very helpful crutch to have available. The music in this game is a real highlight of the whole library. Suitably high-spirited level themes and foreboding boss music accompanies the whole game, with many different songs in there. You'll not hear the same tune in more than one world, and the sort of foyer area of each world has one of the catchiest melodies I've ever heard on this system. No qualms at all about giving the soundtrack full marks, so mega credit to Iku Mizutani.
Listen up! I'm not here to babysit you panty waist. I'm here to make you better Nintendo players. So what does Mario do here, Mr. Jackson?
What?
Wrong. You! Wrong.
Do a little dance.
Wrong.
To get better at Nintendo, pick up super secret game tips on packages of Pepsi. Best of all, you can win one of thousands of Super Nintendo Entertainment Systems delivered via Federal Express.
Boo! I want you in my office now!
This kid's an animal.
You could win Super Nintendo with Pepsi.
Caesar's Palace DMG-CE, developed by Magnin and Associates, and published by Arcadia Systems in North America, Ocean in Europe, and Coconuts Japan in Japan. It's 8:02 p.m. and 85 degrees at Caesar's Palace, and it's time to throw your kid's college fund on the table until it's not there anymore. Sound like fun? If gambling your life savings away on a heavily weighted game of chance is your idea of a good time, then why not do it risk-free on your sofa? This is a collection of gambling mini-games set in the most famous casino in the world, but here you don't get the pleasure of the fountain show, the higher-than-high-end shopping, the suspiciously foaming cocktails, or the hooker-touting street harassers. Oh god, I love Vegas. Anyway, you arrive in a taxi at the casino entrance, 1,000 finest video game dollars in your wallet. There are 5 different games you can explore. You simply move the cursor about the room, clicking on whichever one you want. There can be several slots or tables in an area, and they have varying betting limits. Play safe, or just gamble the whole lot instantly. Your kitty is doled out to you in $1, $5, $10, $25, and $100 chips, but you can swap them about easily if you'd just like to whack a few hundreds down quickly. These slot machines are probably the first thing you'll see. Magnificent Sevens lets you place up to 3 bets per spin, and the aim is to line up bar or 7 horizontally across the screen. Diagonals don't count. There's Video Poker, which works exactly how it should. You can bet the stake of each machine up to 5 times per hand, and you get 1 opportunity to discard cards. This is the one I gravitate to, as there is at least an element of manipulability in that you can balance risk and reward, whether to play the probabilities or go for bigger risks. Similarly, you can play blackjack, which has its own skill to it, rather than just blind luck. There's roulette and a big wheel, which you can bet on in small or larger increments. Remember, there's no real risk, so do what you always wanted to and put $1,000 on red or something. You can go to the toilet in-game. You can't sneak out the bathroom window to avoid your debts, though, so I don't see the point in it. I guess it's got as much purpose as the game itself. The idea is to make as much imaginary money as you can, obviously. However much you make will determine the mode of your exit. A modest profit will afford you a taxi, while hitting big bucks sees you styling and profiling back to the swankiest hotel suite in the back of a limo. Lose all your money, and Susie will summon you back to the cashier to tell you that the doorman will arrange your return transportation, after which you'll be summarily bundled into a crummy-looking coach and run out of town. It's missing something, though. The game's too innocent to be set in Las Vegas. This is a place where you can be walking down the street hand in hand with your significant other in broad daylight, and some guy in a fluorescent t-shirt with a fanny pack will be trying to shove a prostitute's business card into your hand. Remember, it's only a sin if you consider it one, and Vegas certainly doesn't. Thanks for listening to the Portable Power Podcast. If you want to support the show, the best way to do so is on Patreon at patreon.com/Portable Power Podcast. Or subscribe on the YouTubes. We have daily uploads Monday to Friday, where you can watch me suck at the games as I talk about them. You can tweet me at POCubed or on any of the other socials you might expect. Thanks again and have a great weekend.